Hi everybody. I posted a video the other day about an update on the thing that I asked you guys for help with, and I thought that it was all over and done with, but he messaged me again tonight after I deleted him, and it inspired me to write this writing. It's very long because it chronicles the years that we knew each other for. I think it's about 5 years now. So yeah, I'm just going to read it to you and skip the preamble because it's long enough as it is and it's going to take forever to upload. So here we go. Alright, the people who know me are fully aware that I don't hit my breaking point easily. I'm the kind of person to give my partners every single chance possible until it physically hurts too much to continue doing so. A few nights ago, I hit my breaking point with someone. It was the absolute final straw, and it's left me feeling pretty hollow inside, to be honest. I desperately needed to get this story out, so I'm going to give you a rough timeline of my relationship with this person. It's a bit long, so buckle in. I was on Diaperspace, or one of those other ABDL social networking sites. I was around 15 or so, and despite warnings from my parents, siblings, teachers, and television, I was quick to hand up my email address. I was excited, see, about meeting people. Oh, here's my cat. Chippy. Pop. Pop. And say hello to the people. Pop. Suki. Pop. Come up. This is my cat. She's gonna help. She doesn't have a sea legs. She's bad. Alright, I was excited, see, about meeting people into my newfound kink. Specifically daddy type, so I could roleplay. You know, I think it was my overindulgence in roleplay at this age that ruined it for me. I really can't stand online roleplay now. This guy was different though. He wasn't a daddy. I can't remember the name he gave me. He had a fake name that he used on these sites like I did, but I just can't remember what it was. So we sent each other a few messages and decided to move the conversation to Yahoo Messenger. I was in a very vulnerable place that night because my very first online daddy had just left me for another girl, a real girl, and I was crushed. This cat is making it very difficult to concentrate. I remember my first conversation with this new guy going something like this. He says, "Hey, how are you?" Me, okay, I guess. How are you? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Look, I need to be honest with you. I'm not 18, I'm only 15. He goes, okay, I think I should go. And I begged him. I said, please, no, don't. I wouldn't ask, but my daddy just broke up with me and I'm really sad. It's okay to talk if we don't do anything sexual, right? And he says, I guess. Oh, cat. We talked for a very long time. Years, actually. Around 3, until I knew just about everything about him. He was engaged to a woman who didn't understand him. He lived in a nice apartment in a pretty suburb of a place I won't name for security purposes. I knew his favourite colour, food, movie, TV show, band. I knew what made him smile, what made him cry. All of this without a single clue of what he looked like, but that didn't matter because he was my friend. And then we decided to meet. We organised this months in advance. Bye, cat. And I was ludicrously excited. He was coming up to Brisbane for his friend's wedding rehearsal, and he had a few hours to spare, so we both made our flimsy excuses to our loved ones and travelled to Brisbane. There, he put me in my first diaper, and we cuddled, him rationalising his actions out loud like I did that first time on Diaperspace. We're not doing anything sexual, so it's okay, right? This isn't cheating. Yeah, it kinda was. Meanwhile, I'd been to visit him in his hometown for my birthday. While there, I met his fiancée, this woman I'd heard so much about and not much of it good. I stood there, and I put this fake smile on my face. I had conversations with her, and I lied about the nature of my relationship with him, upon his request. I also had to stand there and watch him cuddle a woman I'd heard so many negative things about over the last few years. It was red flag number 1. The very first moment that I should have sensed something was amiss, but I just didn't. I can't remember exactly what happened next. I know I was playing with a couple at some point in time, at the same time as being with my rapey ex-boyfriend, and chatting more and more often with the man this writing is about. I remember one day, after coming home from a play session with the couple, and they lived down the coast, so they'd have to pick me up and drive me to the house, and we'd play, and then they'd drive me back. That's irrelevant. And he told me that he loved me. It was on Yahoo as usual, and he said something like, "I think I love you," and all at once I realized that I loved him too. I loved him so much, but things were complicated. I was still technically with someone, and I had play partners, and he was engaged. He had a fiancée, for fuck's sake. So I told my play partner, Reese was his name, and at first he was very supportive, told me that I needed to follow my heart, and if I loved this guy, to chase after him. It was only when I told him that we'd have to stop playing that he got a bit nasty, but I digress. Around the same point in time, I had a gigantic fight with my now ex-boyfriend about birth control and stopped talking to him for about a month. So it was a perfect opportunity to start a relationship with this new guy who wasn't really new at this point, even though he was already in a relationship and he was making it seem more dire by the minute. She wasn't nice, he'd say. She was cold, she was judgmental, she didn't understand kink, she was making him see a counsellor, and worst of all, he felt like he was being forced to marry her. Of course, I, as any rational thinking person would do, told him that if he wasn't happy, he ought to break it off with her instead of prolonging the agony for both of them. He ignored me, and I put it out of my mind, like an imbecile. We met a few times in hotels for sex and AV play, which was one of the most exciting things we've done until his fiancée started to connect the dots. We received a call to our room once and we just couldn't hear anything, so we hung up the phone. Minutes later, he got a text message from a mutual friend of his and his fiancée saying that his fiancée was freaking out because he was in a hotel and she was convinced that she was cheating on her, so it was her that called. I don't know how she found out. Of course, he denied it point blank. Then, during a separate visit, after we'd visited a bar with a friend of his, he got another text message from the same person saying that she was freaking out again because she's looking at your bank activity and you're in a bar in Brisbane. What's going on? She thinks you're cheating. Again, he denied it. Red flag number 2. I should have gotten on a bus and gone back home. But I didn't. I was having a great time. I'd never worn to a bar. I had an interesting sex life with the most attractive man I'd ever been with, and I felt amazing. I felt loved and cherished and all that other nonsense, even though my happiness was at the expense of another woman who was likely sitting at home in the apartment she owned with this man, sobbing because he'd made an unscheduled 1,365 kilometre trip up the coast for the second time in as many months, and lied to her about it. I continued to try and convince him to break up with her, but he'd always have an excuse ready, though he'd always assure me that all he wanted was to be with me. They did break up, eventually, and the first words out of his mouth to me were, "I've been in a relationship for 6 years, I really need some time to be single and to be myself." Red flag number 3. But I accepted it, because that's what I used to be known for doing. So I commenced another waiting period. I just left the "I have a fiancée, but I'm working up the courage to leave her so we can be together" period, and now I'm entering the "I need time to be myself out of a relationship" period. I don't exactly remember how long that period lasted. What I do remember happening next was something I call the honeymoon fiasco. So obviously, because they're about to get married, they plan and pay for this extravagant honeymoon. He'd hemmed and hawed for weeks about whether it was right or not to go or not, before deciding that it wasn't right and that he wasn't going. The next day, he decided that he was going to go because he'd already paid and didn't want to waste the money. "Is Name going?" I asked, and he told me that she wasn't. The next day, he told me that she was and asked if I'd be okay if he went. I told him that I really didn't think that I could handle him going on his honeymoon with a woman he was supposed to hate, and that I couldn't be with him if he'd do something like that. He called me on the phone, and we had a tearful discussion about it. He kept mentioning wasted money, and I kept mentioning the fact that it was a honeymoon, a trip that was designed to be romantic, and it made me feel deeply uncomfortable. Eventually, he promised he wouldn't go. The next day he messaged me again, saying he decided to go, but they were travelling there separately, staying in separate rooms, and wouldn't spend any time together. And I was okay with this until I saw his ex's Facebook photos of the holiday, because we were friends on Facebook for some reason. They were in the same room, same bed actually. They'd flown over together, and he was in just about all of her pictures. Hello, kitty. Red flag number 4. Yes. I broke up with him over that, even though we weren't really together. But he came to me and apologized, made some stupid jokes like he usually did, and I forgave him, like I usually did. Then he was planning to move. To Brisbane, to be specific, to my city, and I was extremely excited. So I helped him find a place, I helped him get things organized, and then, red flag number 5, he broke up with me. Now, I can't exactly remember how that conversation went down. All I remember is him saying that we couldn't be together because he was still trying to find himself and be himself in a new city, and him hooking up with a girl he went to high school with the very next day. Oh, but it didn't count because he didn't come. We didn't talk for a few days, and then he asked me for a favour, and I obliged. So I took a train down to open the doors for the movers, because he couldn't get up there until a few days later. So I camped on the floor of his apartment until he arrived, and then I helped him unpack the whole house. After that, I'd asked to visit, but there'd always be a reason why I couldn't. Standard procedure, which also should have been a red flag, but it wasn't. And then I moved to Brisbane, and it was the same story. We drifted apart and started to feel like he didn't want to even be friends with me, and then came red flag number 6 in the form of this writing called Even the Smallest, which I posted before. He saw it, and he came to me telling me it wasn't true, that he loved being my friend, and he wasn't lying or trying to avoid me, and he was sorry that it seemed like that. So I made up my mind right then to only give him one more chance to treat me like I mattered. If he let me down one more time, then that was it. I just wasn't going to try anymore. If he wanted to hang out, then he could message me and organise it himself. We didn't speak for about a month, which again should have been another red flag. Then in the middle of one of my lowest moments, he messaged me. I swear he has a sixth sense for this kind of thing, because he always tends to contact me when my guard is almost totally non-existent. I was, like I said, at a low point, so I messaged back. He said he missed me. I said I missed him too, because I did, or maybe I was just lonely. He said we should hang out soon. I said yes. He said he was in America till the end of next week, but we'd hang out after that. I said okay. So he came back from America, and I messaged him. He said he was sad, so I offered to come to his house to cheer him up, and he said no, but the next day would work maybe, if he'd finished packing by then, because he was moving and he had to pack his things. I said, okay, what's the chance you'll actually come over, just so I know? And he says something like 83%, which filled me with confidence. Stupid, I know. The next day I asked how the packing was coming along. He said, not well, but I still continued to wait, even though my boyfriend at the time wanted to come over. But I just couldn't waste an opportunity to see this person. Opportunities to see him were like unicorns or blue moons. They were rarer than anything, and it just had to work out. This was his last chance, but I knew that he'd come through for me. Except he didn't. He told me later that he'd message me with the outcome, and he just didn't. I sat there waiting for a whole day, and he didn't say a thing. Red flag number 7. So, like I promised, I just stopped trying. Another week or so passed, and he messaged me, threw a hey my way, which I ignored, and proceeded to ask both Tumblr and YouTube advice about this situation. Did I tell him to leave me alone because he was a bad friend, or did I just ignore him and hope he went away? Or did I pretend that everything was okay and that we were still friends? That evening he sent a hello, and I responded in yet another moment of weakness. So we talked for the next week or so, and everything was more or less fine, until one day. Before I say this, I want to stress that this isn't here for sympathy purposes. In fact, none of this has been written for the purpose of gaining sympathy. None of it. I just wanted to tell you the story, and I wanted to write, because writing makes me feel better. So, one night in the following week, I was feeling extremely close to death. I'd just received some news and just had a fight with someone who meant the world to me, so I was shaking and I'd just given in to the temptation of making another tally mark on my ankle with my scissors. I was talking to him on Facebook chat, telling him that I felt like I was going to die, and that I had nobody I could call who would keep me from doing the thing I wanted to do right then. He responded with, "You know I'd be there if I could," and I sat there, shaking my head at the computer screen, remembering all those past red flags and thinking, no I don't. Even if you were in Brisbane, even if you had a full tank of petrol in your car and no conceivable obligation to keep you in that house, even if I had categorically stated that I was about to take every pill in my medicine box and that I needed you, you still wouldn't come to me. But I didn't say that. I said, "Can you please Skype with me? I need you, and I don't want to be alone right now," or something like that. And you told me that you were tucked up in bed and you had to go to work next day. That Skype was definitely out of the question. And that was the final red flag. Red flag number 8. That was when I realized that I was done. That I'd been done long ago, but my brain had still been telling me that things could go back to the way they were before I'd seen his face, before I'd met him in real life, before I'd helped him cheat, before I'd fallen in love for him and his charm and his lies and his false sincerity. And I told him, "When you're ready to treat me like a friend and like I matter, then you're welcome to message me, but until then it's goodbye." And his last words to me, also I thought, were, okay, bye-bye. Which brings us to right now. About an hour ago, he messaged me one last time asking why I deleted him. And I reiterated what I told him the other day, that it was goodbye until he could treat me like a friend, and his response had led me to believe that our relationship was over. And it is. It's over. And it doesn't feel fun, it feels like bath and stomach pain, but I know the realization that I'll never be hurt again by this person, when it eventually comes, is going to be worth all the pain. Until he attempts to worm his way back into my life like he usually does, but something tells me that I'll be too wise to let him this time. Fingers crossed. Thanks for listening.